AI philosophy, enabling humans to establish destiny for themselves and establish a mind for AI. Hume's fork is a metaphor for Hume's dichotomy of knowledge, which divides knowledge into two categories: propositions of fact concerning actually existing things, and propositions of relation concerning relations between concepts. Dissatisfied with Hume's dichotomy, Kant further classified knowledge into a priori and a posteriori, empirical forms, on the basis of which he established his transcendental philosophy. Kant put forward his trichotomy: a priori analytic judgments, a posteriori synthetic judgments, and a priori synthetic judgments. Note: a posteriori analytic judgments do not exist. Click the plus sign to follow this account for more wonderful content. Hume's fork is essentially a metaphor for Hume's binary division of knowledge. Hume divided all human knowledge into two types: matters of fact and the relations of ideas. 1. Knowledge concerning matters of fact belongs to synthetic judgments. It relies on experience to verify its validity and is empirical and contingent. Derived from human sensory experience and practice, it corresponds to natural scientific knowledge and specific things and events in the real world. For example, ripe apples fall from trees to the ground. Propositions of fact are generally obtained through induction, which generalizes the universal laws from individual experiences. 2. Knowledge concerning relations of ideas belongs to analytic judgments. The relations between ideas can be confirmed merely by analyzing their connotations, possessing certainty and necessity. This type of knowledge is mainly related to mathematics and logical deduction, and is independent of specific practical experience. For instance, in mathematics, various theorems and propositions can be logically deduced and proven from basic axioms and definitions. However, Kant was unsatisfied with Hume's two-pronged dichotomy. He further categorized knowledge as a priori or a posteriori, empirical, constructing his own system of transcendental philosophy to pursue knowledge that is free from both empirical dependence and skepticism. He argued that human cognitive faculties contain innate forms of sensibility, such as time and space, and categories of understanding, such as causality and substance. These innate cognitive forms are the prerequisites and foundations for humans to understand the world, endowing knowledge with universality and necessity. Specifically, Kant proposed his three-pronged framework: a priori analytic judgments, a posteriori synthetic judgments, and a priori synthetic judgments. Note: a posteriori analytic judgments are non-existent. Among them, Kant focused heavily on a priori synthetic judgments, attempting to prove the existence of knowledge that is neither purely empirical nor purely rationally deduced, physical laws being a typical example. 1. A priori analytic judgments refer to propositions whose truth can be confirmed independent of experience merely through conceptual analysis. In such judgments, the predicate is already contained within the subject, thus they are necessary and universal. Typical examples include: all triangles have three angles, and all brothers are male. Take the proposition: all bachelors are unmarried. The subject, bachelor, inherently implies the attribute of being unmarried. Its truth requires no empirical verification and can be validated purely through conceptual analysis. It is a priori for its independence from empirical observation, and analytic for its predicate being implicitly contained in the subject. 2. Kant held that posteriori analytic judgments do not exist. Essentially, all analytic judgments are a priori and experience independent, while all a posteriori judgments are empirical and experience dependent. The two attributes are mutually exclusive, making a posteriori analytic judgment impossible in Kant's philosophy. 3. A posteriori synthetic judgments are judgments whose truth relies on empirical verification, and whose predicates add new content not contained in the subject concept. For example, the judgment "this apple is red" requires visual observation for confirmation. Other examples include: this dish tastes good, and that girl is beautiful. A posteriori synthetic judgments expand human knowledge by connecting irrelevant concepts based on empirical observation. 4. A priori synthetic judgments are transcendental judgments that expand human cognition. Instead of merely analyzing inherent conceptual content through reason, they deliver new valid knowledge about the world, independent of specific experience. Kant argued that fundamental principles of mathematics and physics, as well as the law of causality, fall into this category, exemplified by all objects are subject to universal gravitation. A priori synthetic judgments are experience independent, with predicates not contained in the subject concept but derived through rational reasoning, hence possessing universality and necessity. For Kant, they constitute the foundation of human cognition of the world, as they transcend empirical limitations while providing substantive knowledge of reality, distinct from purely analytic judgments which yield no new knowledge, and purely empirical judgments which lack necessity. A priori synthetic judgments represent an intermediate cognitive approach. They enable humans to grasp universal natural laws, transcending specific empirical experiences. To summarize the four types of judgments, a priori analytic judgments advocated by rationalism are necessary, yet non-ampliative of knowledge. A posteriori analytic judgments are logically invalid and non-existent. A posteriori synthetic judgments upheld by empiricism can expand the knowledge, but possess no necessity. Only a priori synthetic judgments combine necessity and ampliative value, serving as the epistemological foundation for mathematical and natural scientific knowledge. Kant proposed a priori synthetic judgments to resolve the problem of the possibility of knowledge, exploring the scope of human cognition, the universal necessity of scientific knowledge, and the possibility of metaphysics. He criticized traditional metaphysics for discussing God, the soul, and the universe without empirical basis, rendering its judgments invalid rather than a priori synthetic. He also refuted the previous rationalism and empiricism, which arbitrarily claimed complete human cognitive capacity without first examining the limits of human reason. Therefore, Kant advocated examining the scope and boundaries of human cognitive abilities, delimiting rationality through the critique of pure reason, and establishing a complete system of transcendental philosophy. As previously mentioned, Kant contended that the world humans perceive is merely the phenomenal world, processed and shaped by innate cognitive forms from unknowable things in themselves. Although things in themselves are beyond human cognition, the phenomenal world structured by innate cognitive forms is rationally comprehensible. This is analogous to humans being unable to intuit four-dimensional objects, yet able to understand their three-dimensional projections, phenomena. All humans share identical innate cognitive forms, including the 12 intellectual categories, such as causality, which explains the consistency of human perceptions of the world. Innate cognitive forms are divided into two types: the pure forms of sensible intuition, time and space, and the categories of understanding, including the 12 transcendental categories, such as causality. Things in themselves are first processed by the forms of sensible intuition, then further structured by the categories of understanding to form rational knowledge. Processing solely by sensible intuition yields ineffable sensory impressions that cannot be articulated by rational language. Kant proposed that time and space are subjective human modes of perception rather than objective inherent properties of the material world, implying that time and space may not exist objectively. This viewpoint inspired Einstein's subsequent research. While Einstein's theory holds that time and space are mutable rather than static, it would still struggle to endorse the absolute non-existence of time and space. I am Wu Huayi, a PhD from the Chinese Academy of Sciences and a postdoctoral fellow from Peking University, and the founder of AI Philosophy. For more detailed information, please refer to the complete version of this book. In addition to this short video, you can also click on my avatar to view more long videos.